a man gets shot during a card game in a Georgetown saloon. The town explodes. A mob grabs the shooter. They drag him out and they hang him from a tree. And then comes the part that makes this story just kind of hit you like a hammer. Because the man that everybody believed was dead was suddenly still alive. Now, that is the kind of story that tells you exactly what an early Colorado mining town really was. You see, Georgetown in 1867 was young, raw, and just making money fast. Gold had already been, had already pulled people up into the mountains, but silver was becoming the bigger dream. And so you had this place just filling up with miners and gamblers, drifters, merchants, and men who thought fortune, well, it might just be one lucky turn away. Now, towns like that could look civilized in daylight, but underneath it all, they were just running hot. Too much money, too much pride, too many guns, right? Not enough patience. And right in the middle of that pressure cooker, was a man named Edward Bainbridge. Now, we do not get some clean, polished biography on him, He does not walk into history as a famous lawman or a rich mine owner or some, polished public figure. No, he just shows up the way a lot of dangerous figures in frontier history show up. Suddenly, violently, and permanently tied to one moment that a town never quite forgot. And here's what happened. On April 23rd of 1867, Bainbridge was playing cards with a man by the name of James Martin right there in Georgetown. Now, somewhere in that game, something went wrong between those two men. Tempers flared and a quarrel broke out, and Bainbridge pulled out a pistol, bam, shot Martin in the head. Now, that alone is enough to freeze a room. 1 second, you got a card game, right? And the next second, there's gun smoke in the air, a man on the floor, blood, shouting, you got chaos, chairs scraping back, people rushing in, and the whole room understanding that something had just happened that could not be taken back. The early story, right, moving through town was pretty simple, right? James Martin was dead. And that is where this whole thing turns into a proper frontier nightmare. Because in a mining camp like Georgetown, once people believed a man had committed murder, there was a very real chance that he would never make it to a courtroom. Now, the town itself might decide that the court was too slow or too soft or too far away from the raw emotion of the moment. That is one of the hardest things for people now to really feel, right? Because we look back at those old mountain towns and we see charm and we see brick storefronts and steep streets and mountain air, tourist trains, right? Pretty views. But that is not how these places were born. They were born in greed, cold, desperation, violence, and speed. Men came into those camps trying to get rich fast, and when things went bad, well, those men went bad fast too. So once word spread that Bainbridge had just cold-blooded shot Martin dead, his fate was probably already being decided in the minds of the men all around him. And sure enough, Georgetown moved. Now, Bainbridge was seized by a mob, or what they would have called a vigilance committee, which is often just a more respectable sounding name for a group of angry men who have decided that they are going to be judge, jury, and executioner all in one afternoon. So they took him out and they hanged him just like that. No long trial, no careful weighing of facts, no slow machinery of law grinding into motion. A rope, a crowd, and a dead man swinging. And if that were the whole story, right, that would already be wild enough. That's the Wild West. But this is where it gets darker. This is where it stops just being a saloon shooting and becomes a story about a town actually revealing its soul. Because James Martin was not dead. Not yet, okay? And that is the twist that makes this story unforgettable. So the man, Bainbridge, was accused of murdering, was actually still alive when Bainbridge was hanged. I mean, he was badly wounded, yes, and not expected to recover, yes, but alive. So let's sit with that for a second, right? A town got so angry, so certain, and so hungry for immediate justice that it lynched a man before the supposed victim had even fully died. That is not just violence, okay? That is panic wearing the mask of righteousness. And this is why I keep saying the person has to come first with this, because, once you follow Bainbridge through this, you're going to see the whole anatomy of a mining town, okay? You're going to get to see what Georgetown really was under the surface. So this was a place that was trying to become respectable, right? Trying to become permanent and trying to act like a civilized mountain city. But beneath that really thin layer was still raw frontier nerve, right? Quick to outrage, quick to punish, quick to make something permanent before the facts were even finished arriving. Now, none of that means that Bainbridge was innocent, okay? Come on, he shot the man. That part is not the mystery. You see, the mystery and the moral tension here is what happens when a town decides that guilt is enough and that process does not matter and that vengeance can stand in for justice. That is the pressure inside this, right? It's not just about one trigger pull, okay? It's about what happened next. It is about a whole community in one violent burst, showing exactly what kind of place that it really was when pushed hard enough. And because, Colorado mining history always seems to have just one more dark little layer just tucked under the boards. So the story, it doesn't end with the hanging of Bainbridge, okay? No, this thing, it started to curdle into a ghost story. And not some modern ghost tour invention, okay? Not some thing cooked up 100 years later to entertain visitors in town. Almost immediately, the haunting attached itself to Bainbridge. People began telling stories that his ghost, okay, was troubling the area near the place where he had been hanged. Doors reported opening and slamming, yet strange disturbances. And one witness even came forward and claimed to have seen him with the rope still around his neck. So now, whether you believe in ghosts, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really. Because in old mining towns, ghost stories, they usually tell you where the guilt lives. So they can tell you what the town just couldn't quite bury. And in this case, that ghost, it feels less like some spooky little side note and more like, Georgetown's conscience refusing to stay quiet. A man had been shot, right? Another man had been hanged. And the truth had not fully been settled before the punishment came down. And then the town had to go on living with itself. That right there is what makes this kind of a doozy. because, it has everything that makes frontier history just hit you hard, right? The card game, a quarrel, a pistol shot, you got a wounded man on the floor, and a mob moving faster than the law. And then you got a hanging built on certainty that outran the facts. And then that final strange shadow, right, where the town starts telling itself that the dead man came back. That is not a broad history lesson. No, that's a human story under pressure. And when you go walk Georgetown now, that is what makes the place so interesting to me, because it is beautiful now, right? Preserved and charming. It's almost polished. But old mining towns, they have a way of aging into innocence that they never actually had. I mean, because the streets get cleaned up, right? And the brick survives. And obviously the mountains stay beautiful. And all of that can make you forget what these places were forged in. They were not born quaint, okay? They were born hard. They were born in cold air, hard rock, fast money, and bad tempers, and permanent consequences. And buried under Georgetown's charm is this story of Edward Bainbridge, a man who shot another man in a saloon, okay, was hanged by a mob, and became part of the town's haunted memory before the dust had even settled. That is the part the mountains remember. And honestly, that is why these stories, they matter today. Because, they remind you that under every picturesque old mining town in Colorado, there is usually something rougher just underneath. Somebody got ruined, somebody got buried, somebody got rich, somebody got blamed, somebody disappeared, somebody died ugly. And every now and then, if you look hard enough, you find yourself a story like this one where a whole town just seems to confess without even meaning to. Edward Bainbridge is not remembered because he built Georgetown, okay? No, he is remembered because Georgetown, in one violent moment, showed what it was willing to do. And that is a much darker kind of history. So if you guys enjoy stories like this about mining and the mining districts and the people within them, don't forget to like, subscribe, and do the notification thing, because that, right? You want to see the next one? All right, you guys. We'll see you on the next one.